Welcome, and thank you for attending my talk. My name is Forrest Rosenblum, and I'm an anthropology and philosophy major, and I completed my project under the ever-helpful guidance of Professor Toby Berkovitz in the School of Communications. So, despite what my music might have indicated, my project is not an ethnography of Appalachian music and dance, though that'd be quite interesting. Instead, for my project, after a lot of reading and research, I've constructed an argument that I'll lead you through today that explores the impact that emerging communications and information technologies are having on what it means to actually to be a human at all. The argument will provide insight to the present and future of human societies all over the world, as well as hopefully clarify the meaning of this word, transhumanism. Okay. So I just want to do a quick poll really quick. How many of you brought cell phones to the symposium today? I assume everybody. All right, how many have smartphones? Also, just about everybody. Okay, how many of you actually considered not bringing your smartphone with you to symposium, like legitimately considered that? Don't lie. All right, Jacob considered it. But you didn't do it, did you?
I didn't.
All right. So I guess it's no secret that these devices are taking up more and more of our attention every day and our time. And at the same time that we are becoming psychologically attached to these devices, they are becoming even more attached to ourselves. Right now, we're living under the rise of wearable devices, and they are just, kind of almost melding themselves to our bodies. And so this is not just the phenomenon that's happening in somewhere like Boston, some upper middle class, quote, modern setting. This is something that's happening all over the world, and it's not going to go away. And so we kind of have to think about our relationship to these technologies and how we characterize that relationship. And most of the literature out there, when we're talking about the prevalence and the incredible numbers of technology usage, say that people are actually addicted to technology. And it does seem that many people exhibit signs of addiction. They, if they lose their cell phone, they freak out and have to find it, or if they, everyone's had the phantom buzz where you think your cell phone's on you, but it's actually not. It's buzzing, but it's actually not. But I have to wonder if addiction is actually the right way to characterize these things, because for one, I've never seen anyone in the entire world get addicted to something before. I don't think that that's something that sweeps an entire global population. And another thing, addiction implies that you'll become not addicted, or it's possible to become not addicted with therapy or something like that. But I don't think that any of us are going to go away from our communication technologies. As I just pointed out, no one even considered leaving them behind. This is not something that we can just beat like a normal addiction. And so actually, I think the proper way to characterize our relationship to these technologies is that they are actually becoming literal parts of our mind. I want that to sink in for a minute, like actual parts of our mind. And there's a philosophy of the mind formulated by David Clark and Andy Chalmers that it's called the extended mind. And it says, just like it says up there, in certain situations, there are objects that if we rely on them enough, they should actually be considered part of our mental processes. And to deny them such a status would just be to be exhibiting a biological bias towards our brain. But if there's an object that's outside of our brain that is just as essential in everyday mental tasks, then it should be considered part of our brain. And if you look at these criteria here, smartphones especially seem to fit them very, very well. There are a number of cases, whether it's checking facts, checking notes, checking the time, communication with your peers, in which we regularly refer back to our smartphones or cell phones if you don't have a smartphone. Omnipresent. They are on our person almost all the time. It's a nighttime ritual to plug in your cell phone and kind of say goodnight to it for a little bit. And then the first thing you do, you check the time on it. So, it's pretty much always on us. And even when it's not on us, we really fight to get it back. People have incredible anxiety when they're separated from these devices. And the third criteria is trusted. Now, this one is up for debate, whether we trust all the information that our cell phones bring us. But I would argue that there are many sources of information that are brought to us by our smartphones that we do inherently trust. Whether it's communication, we definitely inherently trust that the person who we think is on the other line is on the other line. The internet sources we check from these devices, we usually check from sources that we have previously vetted and we trust. So they really are ideal candidates for extension. Now, some people might still have a problem with allowing objects outside of our central nervous system to be considered part of our minds. But don't worry, that will change as well. So right now, there are a lot of really interesting developments going on in the world of brain-computer interfaces. And basically put, though the neuroscience behind this is actually pretty complex, uses brain signals as an input and produces a programmed output. And right now, these are mostly being developed for patients with neuromuscular disorders. These are patients that have full mental functioning, but have either lost part of control of some of their limbs or complete control of their limbs. And so a lot of development right now in the medical world is actually working on communication devices for these people so that they can stay in touch with loved ones, so they can stay in touch with the news, and just kind of almost re-enter back into the world of socialization. And so right now, even though these devices are pretty much exclusively in the medical community, it's definitely plausible that, maybe 20 years down the road or so, if these devices find their way into the mainstream and actually are used on communication devices. I mean, right now they already have a computer browser that allows what they call free browsing, which just means that with using that brain-computer interface, you can do anything on the internet that you could do with a normal browser. The interface is clunky, that's granted, but there's a ton of research going into this right now, and should be a field that continues to see advancement. And allowing a communication device to be connected to your central nervous system completely solidifies the notion of an extended object. This will be something that is on us all the time and is regularly referenced in our daily life and used by us. But then we have to question, why are we so drawn to these devices? It's one thing to just say, okay, now we have a computer that's extended to part of our minds, but why are we so drawn to them? Why are we, quote, addicted to these devices? And the answer is not so much that we need to have a computer on us at all times. Though computers have very useful applications, when people are separated from their cell phones, as studies have shown, they mostly feel the social isolation from both the media sources that they subscribe to as well as other individuals. So it's really that we are connecting ourselves to technology, but it's really that we are connecting ourselves to each other in more intimate ways. So in anthropology, we have an analogy of talking about how we are all connected to one another. And this is the social organism analogy. And this analogy is pretty easy to see. You can think about the division of labor in society and see how different parts of society are functionally interrelated and reliant on one another for well-being. I mean, you have farmers, lawyers, they all do different things and everyone relies on each other. You can think of roads that are pathways that bring and distribute resources to different parts of the organism. You can think of communication pathways, which are just pathways where information is passed from one part of the organism to another. And these are, in fact, society's nervous system. So what's going on right now with the advent of new communication and information technologies is that we have this organism that organizes itself and manages itself by passing information along these communication pathways. And now we have a physical manifestation of these pathways that are actually being internalized into our persons and almost reaching its tendrils into our minds. And so that's where we stand right now. And what it is connecting this complex network of electronic information processing connections that produce intelligent behavior, which is our brain, of course, to this one, which is a very small section of internet routing paths. So we are being connected to this greater societal nervous system in several ways. The first is what I call passive connections. You can kind of think of big data here, so our devices are affording so much more information to be collected about individuals, about our habits, about our behaviors, and about our communications. And this data can be used to aggregated and used to design more efficient urban planning. I don't have to talk in depth about the advantages of big data, but they are great. And then the active side, which is when people use these technologies to actually engage with other people in this, quote, cyberspace and create productive and creative interactions. And so what is emergent as a result of these connections is what I like to call collective intelligence, which is actually sort of redundant because actually all intelligence is created collectively. So say Steve here is living 2 million years ago, and he has like a great idea, and he hits some rocks together, and he creates fire. Like that's great, and that's an individual, intelligent decision he made. But if he doesn't share that information with someone else, that information is going to die right there when Steve dies. And so all of humanity's advancements are predicated on the social sharing of information. And so there's no really such thing as individual intelligence. We are where we are today because we share ideas. And now with the way that our societal nervous system is linking to individuals, there are really theoretically an infinite number of new patterns that can be created. And they can be arranged around, they're not geographically limited anymore, basically by space or time. They can be arranged around certain problems or issues that people find interesting or relevant. This kind of creates what I like to call an idea economy, where people are valued for their expertise and what they can bring to the table and what they can contribute in terms of their knowledge and experience to discussions, and really maximize their own expertise and creativity rather than being limited and stuck into a box as they have been so many in like all the years past. Yeah. So, well, hold on. Yeah, so it shouldn't be forgotten that brain-computer interfaces, besides the fact that they prove part of my point that these devices are becoming part of our minds, they also have great potential to allow new forms of interaction that could be incredibly intimate. I mean, right now, a lot of people write off internet connections and cell phones because they are what people say superficial, or maybe not so deep, or not as good as face-to-face interaction. But it should really be like remain in people's minds that brain-computer interfaces could allow just incredible connections between brains that could, I don't really know where that could take us, but it is something that should be remembered. And this is the transhuman moment, where so our brains connect to technology and our technology connect to brains. So the transhuman moment is twofold. On the first hand, we're becoming cyborgs. It's a fact. I said it. There it is. We're becoming cyborgs. Everyone has a phone on them. We carry it around everywhere we go. It never separates from us, and they're only getting closer to us. That's if there's a dictionary definition of cyborg, I think that's what it is. And then, but the really interesting thing about this is that we're not just getting connected to the technology for our own personal benefits. We're actually getting connected to our technology to become social, to become more social. So this transhuman moment is really a human moment, in where we become kind of function as humanity that we've always been, but now with a higher sensitivity and unlimited new ways of combining our intelligences together to create something better and more productive and creative. So I just want to provide a little hope for people who are like worried about this oncoming technology age. And yeah, thank you for listening. And I'll take questions for like a minute or two. Jacob.
All right, so I just had a question, and I don't know if this went into your research or not, but it seemed to what just seemed to be indicated, the analogies drawn between communication pathways through routing and the similarities to neural pathways in our minds, and the way that they literally are represented almost like a mirror image of brain connection. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you have been reading anything of people that work on studies or research about collective unconsciousness or the noosphere, and how, if anybody said that, has put forward the idea that possibly the way that our collective unconscious in terms of dreams is being affected by this sort of externalization of an internal process.
Well, I don't know about dreams so much, but I mean, there's definitely starting with the noosphere, there's definitely been a lot of research on what people call the emergence of the global brain. And I actually found a lot of this stuff towards the end of my research, and had I found it sooner, I would have used it as a jumping off point, I think, for my project. But that being said, I didn't, and so I kind of built this argument from the ground up, from kind of these observations and research that I've been doing myself. But I think you're right on the right track for that. We're out? Okay. Sorry, guys.